So for tonight, we're going to get the canvas coated. And you'll notice from looking at this, that is not white. It looks white, but you can see a pretty stark difference between the color there and the white. There is some pretty bright white down in here though, and that's good. We're going to have a lot of that. One thing that makes this picture attractive is all the contrast right here, that really dark black against the super bright white right there in the middle. But we're going to start with this very background color. And the trick to this painting, what might trip people up early on this one, is if you don't get your color subtle enough. If you go too dark or too strong, too saturated to start with. So we'll start with some, just a tiny bit of ultramarine blue with the smallest little touch of this violet or magenta. Now we're going to use the red later. I didn't put this magenta on the list on Facebook because it's didn't realize we were going to use it. It's a little more purple looking at it in person. So once I get this purple color, I'm going to put just a little bit of that brown in there too to kind of tone it down. The brown kind of deadens it a little bit. And it's very little color, and the reason I want to mix that dark and then so I can pull my light into it is because I want to gradually get the exact, right value. Now, anybody who's painted in here with us before, we do a lot of this color mixing on the canvas, and this is going to be about the same kind of way. I'm going to get it close here, and I won't have enough paint, but that's okay because I'm going to kind of mix it as I go. And this is just the first layer. We're going to cover some stuff up, but we just got to get a coat on the canvas. And always use your color reference here to kind of touch it and see. Mm-hmm. And see, I'm a little dark. Mm-hmm. Our, this paint always dries a little bit darker than what it is when you put it on. So I'm going to lighten that even more. There we go. I got so much paint in my brush, it's kind of coming out. That should be closer. Yeah, that is. Mm-hmm. It is. All right, and so it's very subtle. Not going to show up a whole lot. If you get too dark on this first step, you're going to regret it later on. Just enough to make it not white.
You'll end up with a stormy sky.
and keep it, creamy so it can cover. We're going to get, when you're doing this first coat, kind of X strokes, kind of work it down into the fabric of the canvas. Right now I'm just putting it on thick, and then I'll go smooth it out. Now, as you go down, a lot of this is going to be covered up, so it's not as important about the exact color as you go further down. It's almost invisible. And these canvases are pre-coated with gesso usually, but putting a fresh coat on there, a coat that even after it dries, it's still something about painting on a surface that's been gessoed recently. Mm-hmm. Is a lot different than painting straight on the dry canvas. And this, I'm just going to keep going across it till it smooths out a little. It doesn't matter how smooth it really looks on the bottom. The only part of this that's going to stay exposed is this very top. And I may even have to do a couple coats of that. Alright, so let's start there and make enough paint that you have some left that we can keep using it. Don't let it dry up on you. So we're going to go through this pretty quick. We're going to come back into that same color. And start, as usual, start in the back and kind of work forward. And if you look closely at this, it's just a lot of chaos in the background back here. Starting at the top, the only part, like I said, that's going to be exposed is very top few inches here. The rest of this kind of has some form of trees. But rather than trying to get in here and paint individual limbs, we're going to look at that as one big shape, one big blob of texture. I'm going to get my fan brush, my synthetic fan brush separates pretty good. And I didn't have much of that color left, so I'm going to make a little bit more of that color, that sky color. It's just... kind of purple blue. Got a touch of brown in it. I'm going to add just a touch more of the blue and the brown than purple this time. I don't want it quite as purpley. I want it more gray. And it's only going to be the slightest bit darker than what's up there. All right. I'm just going to try a little section here. Now I don't want it lighter. I do want it to be darker than what's there, but only slightly. It's hard to tell. Make it a little darker, then I can pull some to the side. Once I get it the color I want. You got to kind of play with this, make sure you get it exactly how you want it before you start putting it on the canvas. But I want that value to be just one shade darker than what's under it. I'm going to have to go a little more purple with it. A little bit more purpley. About there. Now lighter. Okay. That's probably about the right color that I want. I want to make sure I got plenty of water in this so that my bristles can separate like I want them to. Alright. Lots of water. And I'm really just going to let this brush do the work at the top of where these trees are. Just kind of let that brush in there like that. See how that works? Just going to lay it on there and just barely touch it and let the tips of the brush make the tops of those trees. And I'm using this as a guide to kind of see how high up they need to go. And as my brush gets a little drier, they get a little more fine. That's good. But notice how I'm kind of turning it to make them face upward. I'm just going to soften those edges up. Just going to keep tapping it. I don't want to paint it solid. It's just tapping in the top edges of those what's going to be trees eventually. Come a little higher with that one. This is not supposed to look perfect yet. Not done. And as you go down, it's just a matter of putting some paint on and then pushing it around. I put some watery paint on and then just go back and kind of push the puddles around a little bit. So as it dries, I want to go more towards the top edge as it dries because it softens that top edge a little bit. Am I sliding too much? Sorry.
I was holding it so you didn't lose it.
This side, the bigger tree, is going to cover some of this on this side, but I'm going to come up on this side as well. Come pretty high on this side, I think. Make sure I get plenty of water. This is about 80% water, when it's, and that's how you got to get that brush to separate out. Now start down here where I can put a puddle, and then as it starts to dry out, I go up here to the top where I want it to look really fine and real tiny little limbs up there. I'm just going to keep tapping it till it's kind of pushes those puddles out. Always thinking about which direction the limbs are going to go and using my brush to kind of create that. Now, as you get down into the body of it, where the key here is just let it have some texture. It doesn't have to be smooth or perfect or limbs or anything like that. It just needs to have some random looking texture to it. And I'm going to let it get a little bit darker as I go down. Just this will take a few minutes, but work fast. If you're doing one at a time like that, you're gonna be here 3 weeks. You gotta do it.
I see you.
This is easy. This is not hard right here. You can just let the brush do the work. If you don't have a brush like this, borrow one. I've got some. Most people in here who paint with us regularly have got this brush. This is one of 2 or 3 that's kind of a must-have. for this kind of painting, for what we do in here. It's just a synthetic bristle fan brush.
Soft fan brush.
Soft, yeah.
Soft bristles.
Soft fan
You
brush.
want stiff bristles and soft bristles. Fan brush.
Alright, as I come down, I'm going to go a little bit darker. So the way I'm doing this is to make the paint color first, and then just come back and dump some water into it. And it's cleaning my brush out, but it's adding water to it at the same time. And this is getting a little darker, and that's good. I want it to be a little more gray and a little less purple as it comes down too. More like that. Now, at this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to paint dark behind this back here where the snow is all in these trees, and then we're going to come back and put some white on top of it. So this part needs to be darker, but textured. Just kind of scrub it, scumble it around, make it have some texture to it. This is all going to be covered, but this is going to, all this chaos in the background is from a distance going to look like all those little limbs. Right now it's all about just texture. And this darker background right here, when we put the light snow on top of that showing through, it'll just look like snow sitting on limbs. All in the background there. Lots of water. And I'm going to come as far down as about there, because I know the bottom's just kind of solid white anyway. And I got a building here, so there's not a whole lot of necessity to putting it off, to making it, spending too much time on this. It is a little darker kind of in this side here. Go ahead and put some darker there. Alright. Before it's completely dry, I'm going to come back and make sure my textures are all good. I don't have any hard lines to cover up any kind of weird anomalies that stand out. Yep.
No Sasquatch.
So, it's a mess. That's what we want. So that's going to take a little while. Okay, so we really got two things, two steps I want to do. For the first one, I'm going to make some dark gray. Okay, so blue and brown makes black in equal parts. If I got a little, if it gets a little too blue, put some brown. If it gets a little too brown, add some blue. And it's got a little white in it, so that's why it's showing up as gray. That's okay, because I'm going to make it gray anyway. But I want this to be fairly dark compared to the rest of the painting. But I'm still going to use a good bit of water. And I want to put some of these little small trees way in the back, and some of these over here. Just indicate some of those. Don't want to paint trees and not thinking about where the trees are and what trees are where. And actually the best way to do that abstractly is kind of turn it upside down.
That's right.
And so I know that a lot of them are on this left side. This cluster over here is where we'll start. So some of those, I got plenty of water. I'm going to pull some of these trees down and just want them to kind of disappear. And that's probably needs to be even waterier. I really just want to start it and let it disappear. And I don't care if they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I just want them to kind of go on there. Now a lot of this is going to be behind my
We're going to cover it up?
building here. We are
Some of
definitely
it.
going to cover it up. Everything's going to be covered up.
Of course.
So why are we painting it if we're gonna do
Because it's going to look good covered up.
it? No, it's gonna look good covered up. It's reading depth.
For the most part, keeping these fairly straight. I may lean them just a hair here and there, but I don't want to get too crazy and paint shapes to them. I'm not really going to do that much in the middle. I want to kind of keep some of this out towards the edges. And this side has a little bit more of a cluster here. That one got a little away from me, but that's okay. All right. All right, just a little bit. Now if you'll hit that with the blow dryer. Now we're back to right side up. I'm going to come in here with just gesso this time. And I had wiped a little piece of my palette here. You may want to get a new one just to kind of let it stay fairly clean. Doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but I want it to be pretty white. And again, lots and lots of water, maybe even more water this time than last time. You want to make sure that those bristles separate. And some of this is going to show up better than others. When you get down in this dark area, it's going to show up a lot better than at the top. But what we want to do is just using the tips of the brush again, is kind of come back over top of this stuff just a little. And it's going to make it even more subtle and even less visible. These trees are snow covered, right? All these limbs are frozen. Now, if you can get it to this point where it's just really separated and the bristles are almost dry, you can come back across it, especially as we go down, and just kind of scribble back and forth, just kind of using the tips of the bristle, just a texture is all we want. We're not trying to paint limbs or leaves or any of that. Up at the top, I kind of care about what it looks like, but as I go down, I really just want a texture. I told you we were going to cover that up. Coming down, I want to make sure not to get solid, okay, but texture, just texture. Skip around a little bit because some places need it more than others, but I really don't want to get any creamy paint. This is just water. Real. If you have areas that are darker like that, now's the time to tone them down. Remember we said we wanted this to be the subtle color changes. I got a weird little spot on my canvas there. That's going to be a good time to cover that up. Water here.
Are we just doing that at the top? Or are we taking
all the way down?
Okay.
That's why I said it may take the rest of the time. And you know, this is going to mostly disappear when it dries. And you think, well, why do you do that? Because it's doing two things. It's covering up some of what's there, but it's also adding some textures and some extra detail in there. It's hiding some of those little brush strokes. So as we go down, though, I really want to, when I get down in this dark area, I'm going to ignore those trees I just painted and go right over top of them.
Same paint?
Yeah, I'm just going to get some more water here. I can't seem to get enough watery paint going here. But as you go down, it's less of the laying the brush down like we did to begin with, and more just scrubbing back and forth, making some texture. I don't want it to be solid at all. I want that real scrubby textured, I don't know what to call it.
Look.
Yeah, where you have, see how that does. If you just use the tips of the bristles and just kind of let it go crazy, you get that look. That's what we're going for.
It looks like snow.
All right. It looks like chaos. That's what we want. We want the background to kind of look chaotic because that's
Snowy chaos.
That's what's back there. This is not the finished product. This is not the subject of the painting. You know, it's all background. This is the part we don't really want people to look at. It's just got to not look weird, not be noticeable. And the more you do this, the more you'll see you kind of covering up a lot of your stuff that got a little thick. But if you put some paint on, then you can come back and scrub it around. Just don't want to use much more than just the tip of the brush. But especially down in this dark area, that's why I wanted to get it dark down here, is so this light could show up better as we get down here. It needed to be dark underneath so the white would show up better. And you notice I'm kind of covering those trees. We may come back and put some more in the foreground. Small ones like that. So these are just ghost trees. All all of this is just background. We're not even started on the painting yet. Some of these, if you look at the picture, you can see the trees themselves look like they're outlined in white. I mean, it's like if you do get a clump of white on there that you can work around into a tree. That's kind of what they look like. They're kind of white. But texture is the main thing. I don't want to cover too much up. I don't want to make it solid and smooth anywhere. I want texture, and the key to that is knowing when to stop. If you keep going, you're going to end up smoothing everything out. We got a little bit more of the same to start out with. This trees get thicker, darker down here in the bottom behind, really more on this left side. And I want to see how much darker this is, the value of that, than what I got there. I don't want to go in here and paint every individual tree by any means, but I want to darken that up a little bit. And then after we do that, we'll come sketch in or trace in the building and get started there. So we're going to have to do that background, then we'll do the buildings, then we'll do the trees, and then we'll do this foreground. So it's all going to go from the back forward. But for now, focusing just on this stuff in the back right here. I want to do sort of the same technique we did before, but just darker. So I'm going to start with a watery gray, but darker. Start with a black, just a touch of white in it, until I get to where I like that gray. Now, before when we did it, we put the purple in and then we put the white on top of it. But it was very watery, very hard to distinguish any shapes or textures. This time I'm going to try to get, since it's darker, we'll try to get a little more, I guess, individual shapes, textures. So I want to make sure my brush separates really good. And I don't really want to go up any higher than about right here. Just kind of want to focus on this area. And I may go, although a lot of this is going to be covered with the bridge, but I think I may come out the other side just so it doesn't look like it's one side and two sides, you know, just so it comes together. I'm going to use the tip of the brush and just kind of scribble this in here, if I can make that work. If anything, I want it to be kind of up and down, but scribbled. Now see, this is just going to be a mess. A dark mess, and not too dark. It's still gray. All right. Keeping the brush kind of at this upward angle, because that's going to give me a little bit of an upward shape to it all. But just kind of zigzagging back and forth, making a scribbled mess. Just texture right now. We're not worried about looking like a tree. Just texture. Make sure you're not laying the brush down. Just use the very tips of the bristles. Okay, it's going to come a little higher. I think a lot of this is going to be behind, starting here, it's going to be behind the building. Now, if you get a spot where you get too much paint, or it's just kind of globbed up, or you got a part that looks weird, before it dries, come back with just straight water. Just straight water. You can come in there and kind of move around what's there. I might do that anyway, just to make it a little more complex looking. I want texture, but I want it to be kind of indistinguishable texture. If that makes sense. Just kind of random looking. Which just makes something look random. Now I know that area is covered by the building, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. I'm going to come on over to this side and do a little more over here. Water. That's a mess. That's okay. Alright, if you'll dry that for me real quickly. With just some straight gesso and water. Same kind of thing. I want to water it down enough that it separates my bristles and And I'll come back over top of all that with another round of just texture. May not need quite as much of this. See how that does though? It just makes a tangled mess of who knows what it is. We're going to put trees and stuff on top of it, so this is the background, not the focus. Don't get caught up on this. It's a lot of area to cover, but you shouldn't spend a whole lot of time with it. Get enough water in here to make it. There's got to be a balance between how much water you get and how much to make the bristles separate, but you still want to have some paint so it shows up. If you get too much water, when it dries, it just disappears. That's kind of what I'm looking for right there, though. This side, not as much, and I didn't go all the way to the edge. It's just a little bit on that side that's going to peek out from the other side of the building. Just enough. Real fine little scribbles of white in there. All right, so get that far, dry it, and then we'll show you how to. So we got to make this this red color for blocking in our bridge. I'm using this crimson, but it's not straight out of the tube the right color. It's way too vibrant. That's kind of what it looks like straight out of the tube. It's way too bright. And I tried just add a little brown to it to make it. It doesn't work that way. The brown makes it brown. It doesn't make it darker red. So the opposite of red, if you look at a color wheel, the opposite of red is green. So to make our shadow side of red, we add green to it. I don't have any green on my palette, but I got yellow and blue. So there's two colors we're going to make here. We're going to make the front side red and this back side where it's a little bit different. But you can see there's very little, very subtle difference between the two. So starting with the light color, I'm going to start with the crimson and add just a little yellow to it. Maybe too much. If you put too much yellow, it's going to be orange. That crimson is so powerful, though, that it will just turn more bright red, basically. And then, with it being as vibrant as that, we'll put just the tiniest bit of gesso in it. And I mean tiny. You don't want to make this pink. But that will kill it just a little bit. Now, we're thinking about adding green to this to make it darker, right? So I've added a lot of yellow. It's a little too bright. I want to darken it, so I'm going to darken it with blue. So the blue tones it back down to where it needs to be. And what I encourage you to do is make some paint. Don't try to make a whole plate full of it. Make a little bit and touch it on here and see if it's close to what the color that you want there. Now, having said all that, you're going to have to paint a couple of coats on here. So if the first coat is not exactly right, and you won't know until it dries, because it's going to dry darker. So you put a coat on and see what happens. Now, I'm using this dagger brush because I think it's good at letting me get in the corners, but also can use it broad and kind of cover a big area. It's going to have some water to make it flow right, but I don't want it really watery. Because, like I said, we're going to have to put a couple coats anyway. This first coat, I really just want to get it covered. I want to keep my lines clean. That's the one thing about this one is it's going to have some pretty clean lines because they're contrast. You got black, red, white. Now, on this white background, I can tell that that's a little bit brighter than I wanted to be for my first red. And then I got it all on the... Well, that's going to be black anyway. I'll fix that later. Okay, so that's a little brighter than what I want. So that my next coat, I'll tone that down a little bit. I'm going to fix that inside line when I do the black. But let's look at the second color before I get too far. Same thing, but it's going to have more green in it. So we'll start with crimson. We'll start dark. I started light last time because I want to end up with a lighter color. This time I'm going to start dark and then lighten it. So adding the blue, again, because if it was regular red and you added blue to it, it would become purple. But because this crimson is so dark and so powerful, it doesn't really turn purple. It turns kind of brownish, but it is sort of purplish. But when it gets purple, the way to fight that is add the yellow to it. Watch what it does when the yellow gets in that purple. Kind of tones it down, takes the purple out of it. It doesn't really lighten it that much, but it takes the purple out of it. Takes it more back to more of a red. So that's my dark.
Warms it up.
That's my dark color. Now, if you look closely at the picture, it is darkest back here. And it kind of lightens as it goes to the front. And you can't even really see this back edge of the building. It's going to be covered with so much stuff. I'm just going to kind of let it kind of fade down into whatever. We're going to come back and cover that with some brush. But it's okay if it's darkest back here and a little bit lighter as it gets to the top. But you should be able to see a pretty good difference between the colors where they meet right here. Okay. So biggest thing I want to block in right here are these two reds. Knowing that I'm going to have to do a few coats, I don't really care about the brush strokes even. I'm just going to block all this in. It's going to look ugly. I know I'm going to have to do another whole coat. I'm going to get the two reds in the inside where it's dark. I'm going to use black, but I'm not going to use black out of a tube. I'm going to make my black. And those of you who know we just mix equal parts of this, the brown and blue makes black, 50-50. If it's a little too blue, add some more brown. If it's a little too brown, add some more blue. We make the black instead of using black. There's black in the box over there in a tube, but we make our black instead of using it out of the box because it's not quite as dominant, powerful, and it saves a little bit of, if later on, if we want to put some true black in there, it'll look even darker. So I want to get that, it's not going to be solid black, and it's going to take a few coats of that too. So this inside part is black. And I drew that fence in there knowing that I'm going to have to come back and put it in later, but I'm just going to go ahead and just cover it. I'll come back and draw that in later, and these posts and all that stuff too. The two reds, the black, and then a white for the roof, and then I'm just going to use straight gesso and block in that white roof. Well, let's get that far. The reds, the black, the white, get the solid parts blocked in. All right, next thing we got to do is do a little bit of the detail on this building, at least on this back half of it, before we can put anything in front of it. So tonight we're going to be painting some stuff that's going to get covered up. Some of it is, but some of it's going to show through. And you can see on the far away picture, you really can't see all those lines back there very good. It's there if you look for it. On the closer up one, you can, if you get stressed out trying to figure out how you're going to paint all them perfectly straight lines. I'm not going to paint all those perfectly straight lines. I'm going to suggest that there's some lines back there and focus a little more on the few that are up here that I can control and let those back there just kind of fill in and give the illusion that they're perfect boards. The biggest thing though when you're doing structure like this to make it kind of realistic is not going to be the perfectly straight lines. You'll do worse by trying to paint perfectly straight lines and making them squiggly. It's better if you just suggest something in there quick. But what's really going to make it more realistic is getting the shadows and the shapes right. This surface here, where mine is like one solid color and it looks like it's out of a coloring book. When this is over, I'm going to have this crisp shadow line up here, casting that dark side up here, kind of coming down. You're going to have a pretty distinct line here where it gets darker here. But the edges, the corner boards, and these boards on the front here, these front edges, if those are nice and clean and crisp, and you can see the difference between those and the shadows underneath, that'll make it a lot more realistic looking than all the detailed lines. When you get to the inside of this building, some things to notice, it's lighter kind of here in the corner, so it's going to gradually get darker as it goes back this way. So I'm going to lighten that just a hair. And then again, the inside of this is boards like that too, but it's just texture. You're not gonna be able to see all those boards. You got a few little boards up front here that you can see a suggestion of. If you look at the detailed one, you can kind of see a lot more going on in there. But we don't have to paint all that. We can put just as much of it as we want, just enough to give that to, indicate that there's something there. We'll worry about the front later. First, we'll start on the back half. A couple of things. Part of this entire painting, that's going to be our standout white. So as I go along, I may put a layer on that and then work on something else, put another layer on it. It's going to take several layers to get it solid. See how you can see through it now. Get it solid and white. But first of all, let's talk about how we're going to do these boards on the back. I see the back of this is going to be covered up with bushes and trees. The big tree right in front here. So I've got this. If you don't have one of these, this brush lets you cheat a little bit. That's got the bristles separated. If I wet it, it'll look a little better. It has the bristles separated. And if you don't have one of these, you can borrow this one. But you need to look at what your colors are doing. My red's a little bright. I'm gonna tone that down a little with my shadows. And this over here for me is a little dark. If yours is too light, your line texture should be darker. If yours is dark like mine, your line texture can be lighter. So I'm gonna make a lighter color to do my lines with. So same way we've made these colors already. I wanna match it a little bit. The challenge with red is you can't really just add white to it to make it lighter. White and red makes pink. It doesn't really make lighter red.
What?
You gotta have a little, but if you get too crazy with that white, it will be
pink.
look like a Barbie house.
That's so good, Mama.
Brown, a little bit of that blue. And again, you have to play with your color to get it exactly how you need it for yours, because everybody's by this point a little bit different. I think that's probably, see how this brush does? It's going to give me a little bit of line there. Now still, I'm not steady enough with my hand to paint perfect lines. I'm going to let the bristles separate a little bit. I'm going to get back on the back of the brush here. If you get up to it like a pencil like this, you're going to make a really bad line. Get back off the back of the brush. I'm going to brace myself a little bit and try to just use a quick motion, knowing that if I mess it up, I can wipe it off. So that's a little shaky, but I'm not trying to paint every individual line. When the shadows and everything go in, and all the other trees and all that, it'll look like you spent a lot of time on detail.
All you do is use a special brush.
This is the special brush. You can water it probably. Do want to be careful to make them come straight down. Oh, my board's going crooked. And I'll do some light, and if I get it lighter, come back and do some dark. The trick is when you hit a good one like that, don't go back over that one. Leave the good one. Go back over the other ones. Again, though, you don't have to have them all perfect. And really, I'm focusing more on the back side with these little close together ones, because they actually get further apart as they come towards the front with perspective. So up here, I don't care if they kind of blend a little more, but back there, I want to be able to see some separation. So you can't tell much about that, but when I put everything in front of that and put my shadows and everything, that'll be enough. That'll be enough to sell the back half of it. So we'll let that dry, and then like I said, I'm gonna come back and do some washes over that for the shadowing. For this front, I've got a little flat brush here. For me, I think it's easier to do the in-between stuff rather than the line. In other words, instead of painting the line between the two boards, it's easier for me to paint the two boards and leave the line. Paint the negative space. But whatever works best for you. Getting the color. I want this color to be a little more muted. I think I got a little bit too red on my initial color. But I know we're going to do a lot more layers like this, so it wasn't a big deal. Let's see what this color looks like, if it even shows up. This is the chance to clean up your lines, your hard edges. That's not showing up very much, is it? Just a little more realistic to me to paint the boards and leave the lines. And you want to do all this before I do any kind of shadowing or anything like that, because the shadows can cover some stuff up for me if I wanted to. My boards at the top and my boards around the edges, the corner boards, they can hide a lot of stuff. I'll clean up those black edges on the inside, make those nice and crisp. See, you don't have to measure everything and do it perfect. That'll be enough right there. When it dries and start doing the shadows, if I want to come back and do a little extra shadow or a highlight here and there. This I keep trying to call it a barn. This bridge looks like it's clean and crisp and freshly painted, but you hardly ever see covered bridges that aren't old and kind of, so it doesn't matter if it's not perfectly new looking. So 2 phases. We'll do lines over here, lines over there, then come back and do shadows and things on this side and shadows on that side. If you want to go ahead and get started on the lines, we'll come back up when we do the shadows here in a minute. So now we're going to put some shadows on here. If you look at the picture, there's not a lot of direct light from anywhere. All that snow is reflecting the light's bouncing all over the place. But you do have a pretty distinct shadow under the eave here. And if you look at what mine looks like now, it's flat. There is no eave. So I've got to add that. My little piece that hangs over the edge there, if you think about the structure of it, of course that's going to be the piece that hangs over. It'll go all the way up to here. But it's so dark under there, you really can't even see that. And then there's a little bit of shadow under this part where that front board is at. Now this back side, you can't really tell much in the little picture, but if you look at this one, that's actually an opening. You see how it is on that side? It's a window. So that big black block right there is kind of square. But now a lot of that's going to be covered up, so there's not a whole lot to do over here. Except maybe we're going to put a little wash just to make it a little darker at the top coming down. And when I say wash, this is what I'm talking about. I'm going to get a dark color. Okay, I'm just going to call it dark. It doesn't have to be black. Somewhere between, best way might be just make some of that black and put a little bit of your red color with it, just so it's a really, really, really dark version of that red. And a lot of water. And so the way I want to do that is I'm going to just apply that. I'm going to start on this side, even though it's not as dark. I'm going to apply that, making a pretty straight edge underneath. It's a good flat brush. Just going to put some paint on there. And then come back with water, just water, underneath it, and kind of let it wash out the bottom of it. It makes a really faint little bit of shadow. And that's the first attempt at it. Several layers of that will make it do what you want it to do. But don't try to do it all in one step, because it won't look right. Even if you get it in the right place, it won't look good. This side over here is darker. See if I can do it without picking my canvas up. It's a thicker area. Now obviously that goes all the way out to there. That's all part of it. I'm just trying to put some dark paint under there right now. Just want to get it. Just put some paint on there. And then come back with the water and pull it downward a little bit. It's okay that it kind of looks splotchy. That's what I want. I want it kind of, really want the water to make it kind of run. Maybe not that much running, but
Ran away.
running on the bottom of it. All this down here is going to be painted over anyway, but this brush might be a little stiff for this. A little softer bristle works better. Pushing water around. This is more like a watercolor technique. I'm just going to put it on there, let it puddle, and then kind of let it drip down. But again, you can't do it all at once. You gotta do a little piece, dry it, do a little more. When it's wet like that, it'll, you'll see it kind of just softens, that bottom edge kind of softens up automatically anyway. Not trying to make a distinct line at the bottom. So just let it kind of fade its way out. As it dries, it'll do more, and the shadows will follow the cracks a little bit too, so you can kind of help it pull down through the cracks. Even already, you can see that's a lot crisper. The final thing with these edges and these how all this, my line looks wavy there, my outside lines. The last thing I want to do is come back with a liner brush, and this one's kind of curved because I left it sitting in the water. Especially on that anywhere that you have a line that's not straight, the liner brush is the way to straighten that out. And the same thing, kind of put some paint on there, get back off the back of the brush, don't get up on it like that, get way back off the back of the brush, and you want to kind of just lay the bristles on there and let them drag across where you want it. So I can clean up all these hard lines, make those a lot neater. Ultimately, that's going to give you more realism than the details. The structure will give you more realism than the details will. So cleaning up the outside edges and the anywhere that there's contrast, getting those lines pretty straight will help a lot. So I'm going to spend some time on that, doing clean edges, corner boards. What I mean by that is the red, when I do a lighter, I'll come back in a minute and do that, but on the edges of the building, you can't really see them all that great on here, but anytime there's a building, a structure, there's always corner boards on it. That's, if you look at any house, the edge where the siding is, there's always boards that just cover the very corner of it. Let me get a color that I like here. This is when you really want to use your liner. When you're using the liner brush, make sure you get plenty of water in it. And if it don't flow, and you kind of roll it to a tip like that. And that's where you can get right on the corner. There would be one board facing the front and one board facing the side. And that just lets you make it nice and straight. It helps to sell the structure of it. I may have not have gotten that color just right. But I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work on getting all my edges nice and straight. If you're really struggling with making a straight edge, I mean, there's always tape. You can tape the edge of it off if you need to. Real straight.
We was ready to see.
All right, so we're gonna, as we talked about before, start in the back and work our way forward. There's still some background trees though that are kind of behind this building, but it wasn't really important to get all that in first because it kind of blends together right there anyway on that side. These trees kind of come in front, so you don't have to worry about the lines too good. But I do want to get a little more detailed background trees on this side and maybe a little bit on this side, just clean up a few little things. We've got this bright white fence that's going to go in here, and as it stands right now, there's not enough dark behind it to give it enough contrast to show up, so I've got to concentrate on putting some darker stuff on this side. And the process of this is going to be kind of like it was for the trees up here. We're going to put some dark areas on, and we've done a little bit of that, but paying a little more attention to detail type stuff, less texture and more detail. Yeah. And our color, and this is what's going to start getting important with this color. We're not using black out of a tube. We're going to make our color, but the half and half blue and brown is going to give you basically a black. What we're using for black. But will you give me that red, Andrew? I'm sorry, I didn't get any of that. The red from the building, the dark. Just a touch of that red because it's got a little bit of a purple. You can't see, you can barely see that. It may not even show up on you're filming it, but it's got a little bit of a purple color. So it kind of matches that color. It's not black, and it's not leaning towards brown or leaning towards blue. It's leaning towards purple for some reason. So we put a touch of that red in it, and we'll get my bristles to separate. And I'm gonna use my liner and make some individual limbs and leaves and really pay attention to some detail here. But we'll start with this brush, and just the very tips of it will give me some stuff, you know. It's a cluster of trees. I don't want it to be a solid clump of trees, but this will give me some, at least the color for the background part of it. In other words, I don't want to make rounded over like perfect individual tree. It's okay that I cover my building a little bit here. This is just enough. What?
As if you could.
Yeah, it's too dark. It's so dark you couldn't cover that up if you wanted to with this thin paint.
Right.
I'm going to do a little bit on that side. And this right here, mainly want to focus on this side of this behind the fence or the rails there. Just doing a little, the tip of the brush makes some textures. That's the texture part of it, but then we're going to come back and do some more detail part. And for that, I'm going to get a liner brush. Probably my smaller liner. Another one of these. This one's looking rough. And the same color, this purplish black, but a little creamier. Get a little less water. And it's okay that that's kind of wet underneath it, because when I start painting on top of it, it'll let it flow a little bit. So we got these little bushes that are going to come in front too that are kind of white.
Yeah.
We'll put those in first, but I really want to get these few in the back, and they don't have to look exactly like the picture there. I just want to get a few of them in here. I'll have to thin that a little so it can flow. I don't want to get too tall with these. These are kind of the ones that live in the background here. I definitely want some that go behind the building. That just real thin, especially as you get up to the top. These little wispy thin lines really sell it as being more detailed than you're really spending time on it. You don't spend a lot of time on it. You just throw a couple of real thin lines in there. It makes it look like you got a lot of time in it. And left some white showing through there because that's going to be some of our snow, but I want to come back on top of this too and add some of that white texture. But see how it kind of blurs into nothing at the bottom? That's okay. It's alright, because we're going to put those bushes there in the front. These are where it was wet, they're kind of fading out. That's okay too, because up at the top where it's dry, they're nice and clean. Some kind of come up back here. Don't do too much of that. Not as much necessary on this side. Just a few, individual things here and there. Let's get that done. Get these. Use this opportunity too to put some depth in here by letting some of this come up behind the building, like I said. And you gotta be careful where you're starting at, but have something that comes, from behind the building. Some stuff that sticks up here.
Pretty good.
Yeah, just a little dark on each side, and then we'll go from the ones right up at the building next. Alright, so that looks wet, but it's dry. I dried it with a blow dryer earlier to make sure. So now I'm going to get some, put the snow on there. This is where we're blurry looking right here, but the snow is going to give it more detail. I don't want to use straight white. I put a little bit of this dark in there, just a little. And a couple of reasons for that. If you look at the picture, that's kind of what's there. It'll look very bright when we put it on on the canvas. But we want to save our whitest white for the places in here where it belongs, the roof and the
Yes.
rails in the front. Now I'm not going to get up into the tree with this time. I'm just going to mainly do some stuff on the ground here. Just to kind of cover the bottoms of those trees a little. Just a little with the fan brush. And the rest is going to be with a liner. A bit of water so it'll flow. And so this is where you can really take what you've put down and kind of shape it. Anywhere that there is a dark limb, that's only the beginning of it. You can extend it and make it better make it longer better with the as a white limb. So just kind of following what you have, but also adding more. Add more limbs to it. Think about which side the snow would be on, the top side of it. If you're doing, one side or the other. So don't cover up all your black. You're going to leave the black showing. But I'm only starting with the ones that are already here. So I got a nice patch of dark color there. I can put some light detail in there. I'm starting with the ones that are already here. Then I'm going to create some new ones just in just white. So having a little dark behind there lets you have room to play. Now, here they go over in front of the building. So once those are in place, I'm going to focus more on these little ones that kind of come out of this clump here. And again, this is going to have a rail going in front of it. So, but the ones that come out of here, they kind of come over. And now when they get in front of this building, you want to make sure they're nice and thin. Real thin. Because they're so stark against that dark building. They're kind of going to the side, but they're always going to go up a little. I don't like how wavy looking these are getting so far. I'm going to keep them kind of, try to get them a little straighter. But about 5,000 of these. That's all you need.
Okay. 5,002.
Just enough to cover the building a little bit, and I just want it to look like it's a cluster of a bush here, not just individual leaves. And when you get a few of those, the nice extended ones out here, you can come back to the middle and just kind of move the paint around and make it thicker and more dense right there in the middle. But these really fine hair-like lines in front of the building are going to really pop out because the building's so dark. This is sort of like a finishing type detail because this is going to show when it's all said and done. And you notice a lot of these limbs too go across this way in front of the trees that go up. So I've got my darker stuff going up. I'm gonna have a lot of these limbs kind of going across them here because they'll show up good that way. It's good contrast, and these
And
leaves
it pushes that other stuff back.
they come from the side over here. If you paint 20 of these, it's going to look weird, but if you do 2,000 of them, it'll look right.
Good.
Right. And the more you get, the more it looks like it's real.
Yeah.
And see, while there wasn't a whole lot of detail in what's behind there, it looks like a lot of detail here. But you see, I'm not spending time painting every individual one and worrying if it has a place to land at start and a finish, and if it's truly attached to a bush or whatever. It's just, lots and lots of little tiny stuff. The stuff on the ground here, the sticks and things laying on the ground, are kind of just a mess like this. But I can use that kind of crossing over texture type thing to cover a little bit on the very bottom of the building. Yeah. Really only towards this side, because over on the other side, a lot of that's going to be covered up. But there's a little bit of stuff here. I'm just making sure that I don't have any kind of weird rhythmic stuff or patterns in things. Down towards the bottom, you can just kind of go wild at the bottom. It's just a bramble mess of limbs and bushes. So see what a difference that made already in those trees.
But mine ain't gonna look like that.
When you get, and we're gonna have a big tree that's gonna come and cover some of this up too. But as you get to the very top of these, it don't show up very good if you get outside of your dark area. But if you look at the picture, these trees are more white than they are black in most cases. You got a little bit of trunk showing through, but like this stuff here is more white. And it ain't really showing up good up there, but that's okay. The way this snow is, it's covering everything. Every single limb, branch, leaf has some ice or snow on it. So, really messy, but that gives it a little more detail. I mean, a little more of a, it looks like it's actually, you actually spent a lot of time detailing it, even if you didn't. Same on the right, not as important, not as much stuff. I want to keep some dark, of course, for my, same way with the thing. I want to keep some dark so it'll show up with my fence going across there. But there is a little bit of a kind of brush at the bottom. And then I'm going to kind of tone this tree down a good bit because it got really thick on me. But same kind of thing here, and just not as much of the tiny limbs that are going in front of the building. There's nothing actually going in front of the building on this side. It's just filler over here on this to make your little clump on this side look real. And let's get that far, and then we'll start putting the.
Let's do it.
We got to get this real dark underneath the bridge here. See how black that is? Almost black underneath there. And it's important to make this white, stark white rail show up.
Yeah.
If you notice, it comes all the way down to below the second rail, which in my sketch, which I traced, is down here. So that floor is going to come to right there. Let's see if I can find a pencil in here. Just give myself an idea how far I need to go down. Now I'm going to be covering up my little sketch, but I knew I was going to have to, so that's okay. So I think it's going to come right in here. It looks like it's going to kind of go all the way up to about here, where it kind of goes up to the building, but it's not a clean line. It's going to be messy all the way down, and then it's going to have all these little, sticks and things in front of it. But the first thing is to get it in there, to get a dark patch, and it may take a couple of coats of this. And again, I'm going to do that black with the tiniest amount of the red in it, so that it has that little bit of purple hue to it. But I'm not putting any water in it this time. And not going to worry about my fence. It's the darkest part is right under the bridge here. This is a hollow under there. And I don't know why I'm worried about making it clean. I'm going to mess it up. So this is going to go all the way over into this somewhat, but it kind of disappears into there. But it kind of comes all the way down. When you're doing something like this that is going to have layers on it, every step of the way, if you put a little texture to it, makes it a little easier to hide it next time. Where if you did make it neat and pretty, it wouldn't cover as easily. It kind of dissipates as it gets over here to the side, but there's a fairly not a clean line, but there's a pretty strong line at the bottom where it kind of goes off the cliff. So this is down in a hole under the bridge. The bridge is over water, I'm sure. But right in here is where it's going to be the darkest. So getting that nice and thick and dark underneath there is important. If somebody will hit that with the dryer real quick, especially in that area there where it's the darkest, another quick coat. Now my bottom of the building there is even covered with a lot of it, so it's not, doesn't have to be too perfectly clean there. All right, one more time with the dryer and then we'll finish this. Okay. So now we're going to have to do the white part to it. Same kind of thing. We're going to mix a little bit of that purplish color with our white. Get it not quite so perfectly white. And some water. Now and you may want to do more coats to get it more solid, but this is all going to be behind those rails, right? So the rails are going to hide some mistakes, but you can see where the bushes kind of come over this side. There's a little more dark showing through, but more of this is covered, and it's really just a mess. It's really just the ground. You know, it's really just a lot of scumble your brush back and forth and kind of cover most of it up. This side's covered more than that side. The darkest area is right under the bridge there, so I'm going to leave that alone a little. But along this bottom edge here, it's just going to, where that black transitions to white is a bunch of little sticks and twigs and zigzags. You know, it's just little twigs and things in there. And we're still going to put the snow in the foreground and, you know, paint all this in the foreground, so that's not nearly done, but this is just the transition between the ground and the dark area. And it's just going to be a lot of grasses and things that kind of stick up in there. See how that works? If you do this right, it won't be noticeable. It's not something that's going to stand out. It's not the subject. It's not something that's going to be you know, even an element. It won't even be something somebody thinks about when they look at the picture. It's just got to be done to make it transition right. The easiest thing for me, I think, is just to put a little paint on there, and as it runs out of your brush, take the tip of the brush and just kind of push it around. Very tip of the brush. Just zigzagging it around. As it gets out a little further this way, it kind of gets solid. So, see how that did. Just let that brush just do all the work for you.
Can you do that?
And remember, our tree's going to be right in here somewhere. So, if you do a lot of messy stuff like that, and then you come back and afterwards and do a couple that are clean, it makes it look you spend a lot of time doing a whole lot of detail on there, right? So now you got a whole bunch of little frozen grasses in there. I'm okay with some of that comes up in front of the building a little bit. I think it looks good.
Pushes everything back a little more.
Now this side over here kind of has more of a. All right, so we got our tree kind of drawn in, ready to put that in. I just wanted to get that straight from the picture so I can get all the right areas that go in front of the snow. I'll get all the right stuff at the bottom, and we'll kind of freehand the top of the tree here. But to start with, we're just going to do black. It's going to make a black 50-50 blue and brown. Add a lot of water. And it may take a couple of coats of this. I'm using this, this is a number 0 liner brush. These trucks are fairly large, but I don't like using a lot of people try to use a wide brush that's the perfect width of the thing. You always end up getting it wider and wider and wider, and you end up having stumps out there. But to start with, I'm going to just block these in. So this paint right here is a little bit more thick than what I'm going to end up using for the little parts. So main goal here is to get good coverage out of it, to fill these in. And if you don't want to do yours exactly like these, that's perfectly okay. I'll barely see my sketch down there. But I like how this particular type of tree, I like how the big trunks kind of come together. It leaves a place for the snow to sit, which which is what we like about it. Go ahead and put the rest of these in real quick. And this is kind of going to disappear down into the bottom. Actually, when I get them in, I'll kind of fuzz out the bottom. Water, that's getting kind of thick. Kind of hard to see where my lines are exactly, and again, it don't matter if you get it exactly like what's in the picture. Main thing is that I wanted a lot of these trunks coming in front of the snow-covered roof right there for contrast. That one had a little knot on it. I kind of like that little knot. Okay, and there may be some more trunk to this, but I'm going to switch gears. I'm gonna keep this brush for a little while, but I'll add a little more water to it. And for those of you who hadn't done a million trees with us, I know some of you have. Looking at the picture, I know that we need this tree to come up to about here overall, but the limbs get kind of fade away and get a lot lighter as they get to the top. And since I'm in this really dark paint, I'm not going to go that high with it. I'm just going to kind of let them go up, roll the brush, and finish high. You can finish upward with these. What I mean is limbs grow towards light, they grow towards the sky, so at the end they're usually going to kind of go upward. And I'm just going to extend all of these little trunks out first so they don't look weird. And like I usually say, you roll to a tip and you get smaller and smaller as you go out, but try not to make wavy, curvy, snake lines. You want to have them kind of be a little bit jerkier, if that makes sense. Just kind of a little, kind of sharp edges once in a while. Sharp corners are a little more realistic than snaky. It's okay if they're not perfect. It's okay if they have little knots on them. They're trees. They're gonna get weird. And I'm just doing these as individuals right now. It's very strange looking, but that's okay. We'll come back and make it right. Let some of these go off the canvas on the side here. That one kind of came up that way. And make sure when you're doing these that you don't just fan them out perfectly. They cross over, they go all different directions. And I'll probably do some more with that wider brush, but eventually I'm going to come down to my smaller liner brush and even more water. And on this, as you go up, having a lot more water in it will make the paint dry lighter. So this is mostly water now. And I'm skipping ahead. I want to do a lot more of that first before I get into this part. But when you get up to the smaller part, if you keep it nice and thin, real watery, and let these kind of just disappear, and you just got to do about 1 million of these. All right, making sure that they cross over, they're not too curvy, and they kind of finish high usually. And a lot of these you can have a starting and finishing place and see where you could follow a limb, but you don't have to do that with every limb. You don't have to start be able to follow each one down to the trunk. They don't all have to. It needs to look like one unit, not a bunch of individuals anyway. So when you get to a certain point where it's dense enough, you can just kind of start making sticks here and there, and it'll find a place to live, and it'll look like you've got a lot more detail in there than what you've actually done. But basically I want to have that over this whole area. I want to make sure not to make it rounded on the top. I'm going to let it look random. That's the hardest thing to do, is make it look random. And then when we're done, we're going to come back and do snow on everything. And so we'll be able to put a little snow on these too. So if you get some weird places, it's going to be easy to hide that with snow. But, you know, don't do 10 or 15 limbs, do 10 or 1500 limbs. So let's get started there. That's going to take a little while, so everybody get on that. Let's. All right, see this part? Back in here, I've already kind of started on some of this. See all those little bitty limbs way in the back? It looks like 1,500 million little limbs back there, right? I'm not, like I said, not drawing each one in individually. This, when you get the bulk of the heavy stuff in, the dark stuff in, I'm coming back in here with some of this water. And this is really just dirty water. That's all this is, right? It's barely got any paint in it. It's mostly water. And when it dries, it's going to be almost invisible like that. I'm going to roll it to a point and just pick a patch. You know, I'm going to say like kind of this area here needs to be thickened up a little bit. And really just going to come in here and just kind of move the brush around. Just mostly up and down strokes, but I'm crossing them over. You know, see how that does? Just the very tip of the brush. Just dirty water. It barely show up. Get a little bit more paint in there. And it's just really more of a texture thing behind there. But you see how that does? You don't have to connect it to everything. This is going to be more up towards the tops where the limbs are getting a lot thinner. I don't want to do too much of this down here in the bottom, but you can do a little bit of it because there's trees behind there too. You know, but especially as you get up to the very top, up here where you got it, where it's going to be really dense, you just want to have a bunch of these little watery sticks in there that just melt away in the background. And it'll really look like you spent a lot of time painting individual little leaves and limbs, I mean, you know, twigs and limbs, and it's really just texture. And if it's not watery enough, it won't work right. You got to have it watery, it's got to disappear. So that's the next thing after you get the solid part, and then solid it up, you know, dense, make it more dense with that watery stuff. All right, we got the trees in. We got to put some texture on them, and the snow that's sticking to them. I'm going to start with a color that is, and I went ahead and painted in some of my bottoms just to block that in, because it's going to take a couple of coats. Don't go solid white on that. It's going to be kind of dirty white up here and then getting darker as it goes to the bottom. But while I got that color made, I'm going to use some of that darker blue-gray is my snow color. I don't want to go white for this, at least not yet. And just texture mainly on the tree, trunk texture, if you've never done this before. Easiest way to do it is just kind of put some spots. Using my liner brush, I'm just going to kind of put some and then kind of move it around with my fingers a little bit. The canvas texture will give you all the texture you need for the most part. I'm going to try to get on the edge of this tree as much as I can. Put a little spot, smear it around. And I don't want to do the whole tree. I'll do a little here, a little there. I want to leave some of that dark showing through.
Yeah. Make it look so easy.
It don't take much at all to do that. The canvas texture gives you all the texture you need. I do kind of smear up and down because that makes it look like the ridges of the trunk of the tree. And this is, you know, it's snow stuck to the bark, but it's also the bark itself. This gives you a chance to separate where your limbs are, where they kind of all look like one limb. So I can say, you know, this one's a little bit more in front of that one. Pull this one out a little bit more. Just get some tiny little spots there. Smear that down. Now with snow, I don't want to do too much of this in front of my snow up here, because I want that dark contrast. But the snow is going to sit on the top. It's going to be right on the top edge of the limbs, of course. It's going to puddle up in the corners of it like that. So let's say for this one, for instance, it's going to kind of puddle in there. And then we're going to kind of spots, you know, when we use put more on the edge where I can make a good clean edge, but then after that just kind of spots here and there, and quickly before it gets settled in to dry, go ahead and just kind of smear it around. It makes it look like you really put a lot of effort into it. Now, down here on the edge, on the against the barn where there's good contrast, you can put more white against the dark background, but don't do too much up here in the snow area. And yeah, do as little or as much of this as you want. That tree doesn't need nearly as much. It's kind of in the background, mainly on these. And then I may go a little bit lighter shade of that, still not pure white, but maybe a little bit lighter afterwards, to just kind of come in here on the very top edges and put a little actual snow in there, you know, and maybe not smear it quite as much. Something about like that, right? All right, so let's do that. Texture of the tree, you don't need to go too far up, just mainly the trunks, and you can put a little up here if you want to, and just get some snow on there. All right, what we got left? We got to put the all the little textures in this snow here. You see there's a little bit of texture coming here, kind of accentuating that curved area there. And then some down here in the foreground, which is good because we like the corners to be a little darker than the rest. Kind of draws you in. So we'll put some stuff down here and right there. But the first thing I got to do is, you can still see through mine, so smears and smudges. I put a coat on there last week just to get a coat on it. But pay attention when you're doing this. It still hasn't reached the point of pure white, although it's pretty close, especially right up here under the bottom of that building. That's about as close as you're going to get to pure white. It's right under that black, and then the fence itself is pretty straight white. But there is subtle difference, and it is subtle. I'm going to make a little bit of a blue violet gray. I'm put just the tiniest amount of that pink in there. Give it just that little bit there. That's not dark enough. But there, at the bottom, it kind of gets a little bit darker, especially kind of right in there. And I had done that some already, but you can kind of mix this as you go on the canvas too. If you got a small enough brush, and it'll work best if it's not perfectly manicured and straight like a wall. That's the time you want to do the mixing on the canvas, is when you need some texture to it. Throw that in there real quick. Now it may take a couple of coats for me to be able to cover everything up here. I had so much showing down through there. But when we get to, and I'll just do a little bit of it so you can see it, and I'll come back and do it later. Just gonna make some black. Just smallest amount of that in there. Little tiny bit of white. It's a couple different shades of it because some of it is pretty dark. And the goal here, I mean, it's in the picture, so we're going to put it in there, but not necessarily just because it's in the picture. There's a purpose for that corner being, I want that corner to be a little darker and have a little detail in it, because it's foreground, so it needs to look like foreground. But I want to make sure that I don't make any vertical marks. They're all going to be kind of horizontal, so it just kind of looks like that's the ground. And these are just, I guess, holes where the ground is kind of showing through the snow. Doesn't have to be anything exact. Probably going to put some on and kind of smear it around. Trick to it is make sure that it don't look uniform.
Yeah.
And make sure you come off the canvas with it a little bit. I think by just putting it on there and just kind of touching it, smearing it a little bit, can give it just enough texture.
Yeah.
That's all it really needs to do is just be a little bit dirty. Get a good bit lighter with some of that. So I may come back and do some more of this after I get my my lighter area covered. Yeah, there'll need to be a whole lot to it. Now I'll come back after that dries and maybe put a little bit more white over parts of it to make it like the snow is kind of sitting on top of it. Then once that's done and this is dry, the next step is going to be to trace, and I'm going to use this white, there's some of this over there in the drawer, this white paper. And now our picture doesn't have the whole fence in it. You're going to have to use your imagination as to where the rest of this goes and where this part over here kind of goes. You just kind of have to draw that. Most difficult part is the turn here, so I'm definitely going to use my white paper to trace, and then I may have to, if I tape this down and use the white paper to trace over here, it's not going to show up on the white. I'm probably going to take the white paper out, put the black paper in, and trace the bottom part with the other tracing paper. So having this taped down first, where you can just slide your transfer paper behind there, will make it all line up. But let's get that done. We're going to just do that, make it solid, make your texture in the bottom, and then we'll trace those in. When we get ready to paint that, we'll come back and I'll show you just a couple little things on this to look out for.